Good evening, everybody. My name is Patrick. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ. I'm celebrating recovering victory over alcohol and sexual addiction, and I'm glad to be here tonight. Tonight, I'm going to be giving my presentation, but I wanted to start with the 8 principles based on the Beatitudes. Number 1: realize I'm not God. I admit that I'm powerless to control my tendency to do the wrong thing, and that my life is unmanageable. Happy are those who know they are spiritually poor. Matthew 5:3. 2. Earnestly believe that God exists, that I matter to him, and that he has the power to help me recover. Happy are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Matthew 5:4. 3. Consciously choose to commit all my life and will to Christ's care and control. Happy are the meek. Matthew 5:5. 4. Openly examine and confess my faults to myself, to God, and to someone I trust. Happy are the pure in heart. Matthew 5:8. 5. Voluntarily submit to every change God wants to make in my life, and humbly ask him to remove my character defects. Happy are those whose greatest desire is to do what God requires. Matthew 5:6. 6. Evaluate all my relationships. Offer forgiveness to those who've hurt me and make amends for harm I've done to others, except when to do so would harm them or others. Happy are the merciful. Matthew 5:7. Happy are the peacemakers. Matthew 5:9. 7. Reserve a daily time with God for self-examination, Bible reading, and prayer in order to know God and his will for my life and to gain the power to follow his will. 8. Yield myself to God to be used to bring this good news to others, both by my example and by my words. Happy are those who are persecuted, because they do what God requires. Matthew 5:10. All right, so with that, I'm going to go into my lesson on dealing with emotions during this turbulent time with COVID-19 going on. It was put on my heart, and I've been working through a lot of emotions, and just kind of trying to process all of those things and get through all those things. So I wanted to share some of my experiences with you guys, and hopefully help you to be able to deal with your emotions, and also help me better be able to deal with my emotions moving forward. So here we go. Good evening, Forever family. My name is Patrick. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ, celebrating recovery and victory over alcohol and sexual addiction, and I currently struggle with food addiction. I'm glad to be here tonight to present this lesson to you all. Thanks so much for taking some time out to tune in. I know our options are limited, but surely you had better things to do than listen to me ramble on, right? Wow, have we seen a lot of changes in the last few weeks. I can't think of a time when things were more turbulent than these, at least not where it affected the country and world as a whole. Most of us do not know what it's like to be at war with another country, and that's the closest thing I can think of to what we're going through right now, where it's impacting so much of the world. On a personal level, I experienced very similar feelings when I was going through court and in jail. Just a lot of unknown and unrest, but I had plenty of people around me that were not experiencing it that could help me through it. With this, everyone is kind of experiencing it with me, so it feels much different. I know one thing that has been hard for me is to feel comfortable talking with people about my feelings throughout this without feeling like I'm adding a burden to them as well. I have also found that when I share my feelings with people, it's very common for them to respond with, "Everyone is feeling like that," or "No one else has ever been through this either." While I know that it's true, it's still important for me to be able to share how this is making me feel, how it's impacting me. My feelings are still valid. I hope that you are able to share what you're going through with a strong sponsor or accountability partner as well. If you haven't been able to, I hope that you will know that it's okay to do that and feel those feelings without feeling like, since everyone else is going through it too, that somehow your feelings are not important. It's so easy to fall into that trap of feeling like everyone else's feelings are more important than yours are. For so many of us, this is what kept us in addiction. This is unhealthy thinking and can let you fall back into old habits and patterns, but the good news is we have a group for that. It's so easy to get caught up in the news cycle and caught up in the numbers that I can lose focus on my recovery. When I lose focus on my recovery, fear and doubt creep in, and I start overthinking everything, and that really opens up a lot of emotions. I'd like to share with you guys tonight a passage of scripture as a sort of devotional, but it's going to lead me into talking about how we can handle emotions during a time like this. The passage I want to share is from Mark 6:45-52. Immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side of to Bethsaida, while he himself was sending the crowd away. After bidding them farewell, he left for the mountain to pray. When it was evening, the boat was in the middle of the sea, and he was alone on the land. Seeing them straining at the oars, for the wind was against them, at about the fourth watch of the night, he came to them walking on the sea, and he intended to pass by them. But when they saw him walking on the sea, they supposed that it was a ghost, and cried out, for they all saw him and were terrified. But immediately he spoke with them, and said to them, "Take courage, it is I, do not be afraid." Then he got into the boat with them, and the wind stopped, and they were utterly astonished, for they had not gained any insight from the incident of the loaves, but their hearts were hardened. In reading this passage recently, I was struck by how Jesus responded. Maybe it's because of what's going on in the world today with the coronavirus, or maybe it's just a byproduct of how I've been feeling. Either way, God whacked me with the spiritual 2x4, and he certainly got my attention. Jesus was on land praying, and the disciples were going across the water, and they started to strain. He didn't go back to what he was doing. He went to where they were. And when they kept struggling and the storm kept holding them back, he jumped in the boat with them and calmed the storm. Man, was I blown away by this. I'm sure I've probably noticed this before, and I've probably even heard sermons preached on this, but it really struck me. First, he came alongside them, much like we do in recovery. We come alongside each other to help each other through tough times. When he got in the boat with them, and immediately the storm stopped. Then he got in the boat with them, and immediately the storm stopped. Think of this storm as chaos in your life. Have you ever had someone come beside you during chaos? Then you started talking about what was going on, and all of a sudden the storm that was causing all that chaos suddenly subsided? This is what recovery does for people, and what it has been doing for people for nearly 100 years since AA was founded in the 1930s. We go through the ups and downs of life, then we go to a meeting and we start talking about what's been going on in our lives, and we hear our story coming out of the mouths of some of the other people sitting at the table. People that we look at and think they have it all together, only to find out they're as messed up as we are. This is why recovery works, folks, and I'm so grateful that it does, because I wouldn't be sitting here today if it didn't work. In the last month, I've been through a myriad of emotions. I've been mad about meetings being canceled and been scared to death about the effect that those cancellations would have on people in recovery, knowing that those meetings have been the only thing holding them together through the storms of life. While some of these storms of life were created by their own doing, they were attending meetings and doing the best they could, and now they have financial strains added to that. Maybe they lost a job or their hours have been reduced. Things that were outside of their control were suddenly complicating their life, and the one stable thing they had was taken away from them. I pray that they have strong sponsor accountability partners to keep them focused on recovery, but I know that some will fall away from recovery, and that's unfortunate. So I was mad about that, but I needed to realize that all the mad in the world wouldn't change the situation, and the anger was only eating me up inside and making it harder for me to maintain my peace and my serenity. What did I do? I talked about it. I talked to friends, I talked to accountability partners, I talked to my sponsor. Really, I talked to anyone that would listen. I also prayed, and I read the Bible. I read the AA Big Book, and I read CR lessons. I did whatever I had to do to change my focus. It took a couple weeks of me doing that to start to feel better. I even did a couple YouTube videos for CR where I talked about these things. This anger morphed into fear of what was going to happen, fear that I was going to lose my job or lose hours and not be able to pay my bills. A lot of that fear came from one of my biggest character defects, which is always and never thinking. It's always going to be this way, or it's never going to get better. I have a feeling some of you out there feel this way too. I needed to recognize that thinking was going on so that I could work on it and get better, and that took me some time. If you find yourself there, make sure you're talking about it and doing what you can to work through it. Pray about it. Talk to God about it. Call your support team. Call someone you trust. Just don't feel alone, and don't sit in it for too long. God gave us emotions for a reason. They're natural, but they're also workable. You can overcome emotions. For me, emotions get me out of denial. I can say all day that I'm not worried about something, but eventually worry will manifest itself in my emotions, and I will no longer be able to deny its existence. When my emotions get out of control, I feel overwhelmed. I start to feel the weight of the world on my shoulders. Oftentimes I will feel that tension in my neck and my shoulders. I'll be cranky. Usually I notice this before anyone else does, because it starts in my thoughts. All of a sudden, everything bothers me, and it bothers me way more than it should. Instead of being able to laugh something off, I stew on it for hours. I even had days where I woke up feeling overwhelmed, and the whole day started off like that. I've spent 10.5 years of recovery, avoiding chaos, and now everywhere I turned, all I could see was chaos. And not only was it affecting me, but it was affecting my friends and my family all over the country. And I started to feel like there was nowhere I could turn. Again, I talked to anyone who would listen. I asked friends to pray for me. One day while at work, I told my boss I didn't know if I was going to be able to make it through the day. He's a good man and said exactly the right thing to me. He said, go take a long lunch, as much time as you need. If when that's over you still feel like you need to go home, you can go home, but take that lunch and see. Well, he was right. I took a long lunch, got food at a drive-thru, parked my car, and just relaxed. I reached out to people during that time, and when all was said and done, I went back to work and finished out the day and started to feel better. I just needed to stop sitting in that feeling and start to work through it. That was such a powerful lesson, and I'm grateful to my boss for seeing that and allowing that. Matthew 11:28-30 says, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Today I know that I can cast my burdens on God, and He will take them. Sometimes I cast those burdens on Him by prayer, and sometimes I need to talk about it with a friend, and then God takes them. It looks different for me at different times, and it will look different for you than it looks for me. And that's okay. Do what you need to do during stressful times. Just use your tools that recovery has taught you. If you don't feel confident in those tools, find someone you trust from your small group or that you've gotten to know, and know this. They are confident that the tools will help you. So if you can't see it, let them see it for you. We all want to help you through this. Many of you have probably heard me say it before, but it bears repeating. A burden shared is cut in half, but a joy shared is doubled. I love this saying because it says a lot. When I share my burdens or struggles with another person, they get to relieve me of some of that burden and take part of it so it's more manageable for me. When I share a joy or a victory, it is doubled because the other person gets to share in my joy. I'm grateful that tonight I get to share my joy with all of you. It's been a tough road for me, but I'm on the other side and my footing feels more secure. I'm no longer having emotional meltdowns for no apparent reason. I don't get too confident and act like I won't get overwhelmed again. I might, but at least I know that I can work through it and come out on the other side. One tool that has helped me is a form called a list of feelings to help identify step 4. This is a list of many, many feelings, and I use it when I'm overwhelmed by my feelings and emotions, because what happens is all those feelings combine and they manifest themselves in anger. So I walk around thinking about how angry I am. Well, then when I want to work on it, I try to fix my anger. I try to work on it. Usually for me, that what happens is I figure out pretty quick that anger isn't my only emotion or feeling that I'm dealing with. There are underlying feelings that are causing my anger. In the past, when I was in active addiction, I relieved that by drinking or turning to pornography. Well, now that I'm in recovery, I just have to deal with all of this stuff head on. There's no more covering it up. So today I grabbed that sheet out and I started circling all the stuff, all the feelings that I'm feeling in that moment, and I start to find the underlying feelings that I can actually address and work on. As I work on them, the anger subsides and I start to feel better. I talk about this a lot in my small group when we go over this sheet, but I remember the first time I used it. I was going through a really rough time during a breakup of a long-term relationship, and I was overwhelmed with feelings and I was quite angry. I found this sheet, brought it home from CR, and told my sponsor I was going to work on it. I started circling all the feelings that I had. When I was done, I called my sponsor and told him I would have been better off circling the feelings I didn't have, because I circled almost all of them. I was then able to work through these things with him, and my road to healing had truly begun. I encourage all of you tonight to be open and honest about your feelings as we are all going through this pandemic. Know that God is right there with you to help you along the way. Reach out to your support team and be honest about what you're feeling, because it matters. I would also encourage you to use the feeling sheet to get to the root of it and start working on getting better. Whatever way will work best for you, don't be afraid to do it. Use your tools. If you have questions, talk to someone about it. Pastor Megan is available, or you can talk to your facilitators. We're all here to help you. Thank you for letting me share.